So tonight I'd like to circle what is known as the five spiritual faculties or powers, which are faith, effort, mindfulness, concentration, and the proverbial wisdom, hopefully. So I'll start with a poem here. It's called Two Legs. Now, having found the mountain, looking up, covered in mist, heart sinks. Inner teacher says, stop, feel your feet. Looking only at your next step. Two legs pointed up the mountain. Listening to the many voices waiting for that one word that points the compass to that original face. Pinnacle within your own mind. This leg, wisdom. That other leg, stiff. Held by old pains, memories, protections. Only moves when the heart softens, giving it that gentle touch. Quote, I have been with you all these years. We will climb together. Knowing all those that we have touched climb with us. Dalai Lama's refrain calls over and over again, don't give up. So, speaking of these five powers or spiritual faculties, that they are the kind of support blocks that help us in supporting actually the path, the journey itself. And it's interesting because last night at the end I was talking about the Four Noble Truths and that the path itself, which the Buddha referred to as this Eightfold Noble Path, which is really based on the fact that we have to have a proper view, proper understanding, or proper thought. We need to have proper speech, action, livelihood. We have to have proper mindfulness, concentration, as a practice that then allows us to really, it's simply to understand ourselves, to see into what we're doing. There's a wonderful quote, if I can find it here. This is from the Venerable Ajahn Chah. And actually, was it last week? I was with Ajahn Lim, who is actually Ajahn Chah's successor, which was very sweet, with a lot of monks and there is kind of a very much in that tradition, which is really my lineage, is a very much he's so quiet. There's something about him that is so back there and quiet, and you could tell he just rests in himself. He's not, looking out for any confirmation or anything else. Just this. And this is just a quote from that forest tradition, which is not so much into the intellectual side of it, but more into the, I could say, the simplicity of it. And this is kind of his take on the Eightfold Noble Path. Traditionally, the Eightfold Noble Path is taught with 8 steps, such as right understanding, right speech, right concentration, and so forth. But the true Eightfold Path is within us. 2 eyes, 2 ears, 2 nostrils, a tongue, and a body. These 8 doors are the entire path. Know these doors, examine them, and all the dharmas will be revealed. The heart of the path is so simple, no need for long explanation. Give up clinging to love and hate and just rest with things as they are. That is all I do in my own practice. Do not try to become anything. Do not make yourself into anything. Do not be a meditator. Do not become enlightened. When you sit, let it be. When you walk, let it be. Grasp at nothing. Resist nothing. Of course, there are dozens of meditation techniques, but it all comes back to this. Just let it all be. Step over here where it's cool, out of the battle. Why not give it a try? Do you dare? Sounds good. Step out of the struggle. You know, lately in kind of my world, I've been in the complexity of decision making and options. And this has just been around some stuff for me around surgery and all this stuff, and incredible amounts of pouring of information that comes in. And you know, recognizing, oh, there has to be this kind of wisdom or discernment there. And but ultimately, there's another piece to this, and I haven't got there yet. Okay, but it has to do with the fifth of these 5 spiritual faculties. You know, and the first of them is faith. You know. And somehow, you know, faith is sometimes translated as confidence, but ultimately, in some ways, we have these incredible kind of brains, and this, we're taught critical thinking in the West, specifically to come to decisions. I can just stop right there. You know? Because it's not how we make decisions. You know, we actually make decisions. You know, I think it's just one mistake after another. And so, and it comes from some, you know, a lot of times not so much critical thinking as actually some emotional or intuitive connection. And I can't even say where that comes from. All I know is that the practice that we do, in the sense of bringing ourselves to the sense of watching how complex we create stories, we create ourselves, that that there is a way of listening that hopefully is what we're training in here. And it's really just that, it is a way of listening. And that way of listening has to do very much with how we approach our experience. You know? And particularly in this culture, one of the truths is we are cerebral, and we go and we think we can outthink it on some level. You know? And I'm not saying we don't need that faculty. What I'm saying is that there is another way of approaching how we make those decisions. And this idea of faith, in so many, well, in traditions where there's this idea that the first level of this is sometimes known as blind faith. You know, and that actually is not what I'm talking about. Because blind faith basically you sort of put either blinders on, or you kind of close your eyes, or you shut off the thinking. The second of these is called verified. And it is a type of faith that is based on really a trained mind that allows its self to connect. You know, and how we do that is quite specific here. It is a way that, first of all, and I'm not saying we don't need information, because I think that's always true, that we have to have some kind of knowledge. But what do we do with that knowledge has to do with a specific connection that we make. And this practice as a what knowable practice is basically, you could use the word as somatic. It is a body awareness that is trained. Not just simply, you know, it could be in the sense of when I talked yesterday morning about actually just what they call the play of the elements of kind of air, earth, water, fire, and knowing the qualities of that experience. It's actually being able to do that, but it's actually training the mind to make that connection, and then listen to the heart. And so there is actually the heart that's knowing itself. And that in essence, this faith I'm talking about is where there is full connection. You know, it means the intelligence, this basic intelligence, which is one of the fundamentals, this clear seeing or clear intelligence, is a product of the training. But that's not enough. You know, otherwise this would be really dry. You know, be really dry. And it can be actually seen in some ways. It is sometimes. The practice can be fairly dry. But when I think of the word, faith or confidence, that somehow it's not enough to know. You know, there has to actually be, maybe it's a capacity, the word that comes to mind is surrender. You know, so the knowing has to do with recognizing the constructions, how I build myself, how I tell myself these stories, how I control and influence, you know, and defend, sometimes attack, you know, all of this. But it's not what I'm talking about, you know. You know, that is one piece of it, you know. And our capacity to drop down, to train the mind to become a servant of the heart. Right? But you can't, unfortunately, I wish I could say, oh, you can go directly to the heart, except that it's about a full, a wholeness that reeks of phenomenal intelligence. And the intelligence is not about facts. It's really about I like the word kind of intuitive intelligence. You know, so that I think our brains are there's so much more to them than just our connecting A to B. You know, there's actually a kind of a wide angle that's there. And I like the language of basic intelligence. That our nature, our kind of deepest knowing of ourselves, has a phenomenal piece of intelligence in it, which is beyond what you actually know, if that makes sense to you. And why I say that is that the Buddha talked about it as the ground of being, which he explained as, you know, this Tathagatagarbha, which is basically translates as Buddha nature, which we have to be careful with that word, because we want to deify it. The truth of it is the fact that we have the same capacity as the Buddha of 2,500 years ago in us. You know? And because it's in us, it's part of our cellular structure, that what I was saying the other night, I was saying I have no idea what a Buddha mind must be like. You know? Because it knows things that can't be known in the sense of a mathematical knowledge. You know? When he said that this was in the Abhidharma where he talks about, and I use this one example because I don't know a whole lot about this, but when one, in a wink of an eye, what he calls an astakalapa, which we know as a subatomic particle, rises and falls 17 trillion times in the wink of an eye. You know, and mathematically, that's pretty close. You know. So how is that knowledge? And there are other things. You know, he talks. One of the wonders I always have, you know, it's kind of science fiction buff. You know, is that he says, speaking of this world, and we know, as we know, the universe is expanding, and they're just these. You know, if you look through the pictures of the Hubble telescope, and you look at the phenomena that's out there, I mean, it's just unbelievable. You know, total, you know, galaxies with hundreds of millions of stars, and then those stars have whole, you know, planetary systems that run around. And he just simply made the statement, "Oh, there are 100,000 worlds, you know, where this life form goes on. 100,000." You know, now I don't know what in time, you know, they have this time business. It's so out there. I have no idea, but it gives me some idea, you know, some sense that there's a lot more going on here than I could ever even conceive of. You know, it's sort of like I think of myself sometimes like an ant on an elephant. You know. But I don't actually know I'm on the elephant. I'm crawling around and you know, the elephant's walking around and I'm going, oh, you know, can't know too much from that place, you know. And the elephant has a life of its own, carries on. Wonder, you know, this whole, you know, Gaia theory and all this stuff, that this is kind of a living process that, you know, why hasn't the ocean gotten saltier? Shouldn't it get saltier? You know, according to physical science, it should. You know, but it seems to stay. The temperature stays within this certain range that supports human life. You know, this whole kind of living system. Who says it's not the elephant? You know. Ganesh. Actually living on Ganesh. We don't know. But there's also true is that if we are connected to that, and there's this little teeny brain that we kind of think we know things in, and we also have the capacity to listen deeper than we could imagine when this connection is made. And the wonderful things of living in India and kind of traveling so much in Asia, one of the things I loved about it was it is the epitome of chaos. You know, it is the epitome of chaos. They're absolutely, you're just amazed at the amount of chaos. You know, but the thing that also amazes you is that somehow it's working. There is some kind of self-organizing principle. And even in crowds, it seems to, you know, I don't know how it works, but they somehow pull it off. But it doesn't make any rational sense. You know, it's a great place to learn about the unrational, you know, and how mysterious this all works. You know, we can't know that. And so for me, there's this piece around, well, you know, I can either think I know, or what I'm actually practicing here is suspending my belief system constantly. Oh, I think it's that, or I know it's that. And then actually I have to suspend it. You know, like, oh, so maybe something else is going on here I'm not getting. Okay? So I'm actually suspending. That's the training. I'm suspending my mind. And then I allow myself to listen from someplace else. Try it out. You know, you're actually trying it out. So we have to sort of turn our minds. In some way, this idea of faith is turning our minds to suspend the belief system, but also not to go into denial or diss what's here. And that's the tricky part, you know. Because you could go into what the Buddha explained and why this, he called a verified faith, is that we're always on this little kind of teeter-totter between nihilism on one side and eternalism on the other. You know? And we're kind of teeter-tottering there all the time. And believing in eternalism, you know, which many cultures feel that, oh yes, you know, if I say I'm totally taken care of in that, maybe somewhat naive. And at the same time, in some of the existential views, where, you know, it's not, and it's just a nihilistic view. You know, that either one of these may be a warping, and it's why he refused to use the word God. You know, it wasn't that he didn't say there was or wasn't. He just refused to speculate. You know, what he wanted was the questioning, because he always would go back to, and so many in his dialogues would be asking a question back to the person. You know, so they had to suspend their view and possibly then expand themselves. You know, so it's something to ask of us. You we all have a lot of this, by the way. You know, in the sense of faith, I think. Simply because living is not knowing. You know? And if you try to know in the mind of the expert, there are few choices, but in the mind of the beginner, there are many choices. And this whole practice is based on trying to keep a beginner's mind, where we're always approaching the next moment without imprint. You know, like a bird leaves no trace in the sky. And that's actually really, I think, what the great masters of all times have been. Like birds in the sky, they leave no trace. And the rest of us just kind of drag around these black bags full of all this garbage. And once in a while we stop at a place like a retreat and we start pulling out all the garbage and we think, I don't need this anymore. Why have I been dragging this around for the last year or 2 years or whatever, you know? And that kind of creates more here kind of a dumping ground than anything else. You know, we're just kind of dumping a bunch of stuff here. It's okay. So we have faith, and I think also at the same time, this idea, over in the lists and lists of Buddhist practice, one of the consistent words that keeps coming up is the word effort. But again, effort, like faith, there can be blind faith, and there can be, verified faith. And in the same way that effort, I think when we first come into this, there's kind of the effort to get something, which is something that's very culturally approved of over and over again, that somehow if you do this, you're going to get something. And what's going on here, it's a little tricky. Because the effort has to do with showing up and not getting anywhere. So it's actually the continuity of showing up instead of the continuity of getting somewhere. And so we have to actually change our kind of vocabulary in some way. And yet, at the same time, one of the first things that brings people sometimes to practice, besides the suffering, is the carrot. That somehow you will, get some, wonderful thing if you work really, 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 really hard, and you'll get the carrot, right? All right. Small problem. It's so tricky that if wanting is there, if desire is there, this doesn't work. Ironically. So what we have to find is this kind of this continuity of arriving. Oh, I'm here. Oh, I'm here. I'm here again. I'm here again and again. That's what we're actually doing. So there is never actually, the only place you're going is here. And that's a certain type of you can use the word effort, but just to keep it translated properly. And I'm not saying I think everybody who comes into this has to have that. Continuity is a trick. It is a training. It is a part of there's so many levels to it because the body has to have the right amount of whatever substance it needs, or food, or it needs to be in a certain relaxation, or it needs to have a certain amount of pliability, a certain amount of sleep, a certain amount of energy. To be able to have the continuity of moment to moment, because too much of the energy, you have what they call the wild mind, and then if you don't have enough, you have what they call the sinking mind. And what we're trying to find is that continuous effort, or the continuity of the mind registering here over and over again. So the third of these is kind of the proverbial, center of all lists of lists, and the word is mindful. And first of all, just to play with this a little bit, trying to define it. I'm not I've heard a lot of definitions, so. And I'm certainly no expert in kind of the etymology or the definitions of these things. But from experiential point of view, that what is happening is consciousness, or you can say awareness, which I actually like the word awareness better, is something that is happening at such rapid speeds that in the blink of an eye, it rises, I don't know how many times. You look at the Dharma, they'll tell you. But as far as I know, it's just lots. Okay? And it has the tendency through its karmic and environmental flavoring or propensities to go and stay for a period of time. And then it moves somewhere else over and over again. And that's always happening at such rapid speed that what we call mindfulness could be said to be a memory of a contact. So we're always behind the 8 ball. We're way, way back behind the 8 ball that's already happened. So you could say mindfulness is just the memory of what we would say is that Vedana, we talked about last night, is that contact of pleasant and unpleasantness. And that there is a knowing of that. So we're really we are this collective, modulated karmic experience that is always trying to catch up to itself. I hope that's not too depressing. But anyway.
Can you say more about the mindfulness as a memory?
Yes, the mindfulness is just simply, it is we're never actually right there. We're always, I think, thousands of moments behind what's actually been experienced. The awareness at this point is not keeping up with that. Okay? Now, it's possible, and this is the thing, I'll get there in a minute first. I have to construct this. That the mindfulness, because it's simply a memory of an experience. And there is, at that point, the awareness can actually get lost in the object. And usually it only stays, it doesn't, I think, I don't know if this is right, 5, 6, 7 moments. And then it jumps to something else. And then it jumps to something else and jumps to something else and jumps to something else. So we get the sense that sometimes, you know, we stay at the, say, the hearing door, you know, but actually, you know, you're scratching your butt and you know, you got a little tick here and you're thinking about what I said, you know, a minute ago, and there's this complexity going on that is seems so solid and real, but it actually is not. And so the mind has a possibility in this memory, in its ability to perceive, you know, that when that perception is there, that it actually knows what's happened. Okay. Now I'm going to bust that, but I'm going to also add a piece here, and this comes out of the something I picked up in Dharamsala some years ago, and from this Kelsang Wangmo, and it was the fact that I don't know why this was so. It was profound. It was one of those insights you have. You go, oh wow. And what it was is there's what is known as the 5 aggregates, or the 5 streams of being. And the Buddha said, this is all we are. You know? And that we are basically form, feeling, perception, mental formation, and I like the word awareness, or consciousness. And those are the 5 streams. You know? Now, what was said was that in every mind moment, that a mind moment has 17 moments to it. And of those 17 moments, 1 moment is pure perception. 16 moments are mental formations. Okay? And you kind of go,
Yeah.
well then I'm just making this all up. Right? I'm making up the whole damn thing from that truth. But, you know, it's like the glass, I mean, this thing's been so interesting to me, is the glass you can say is half empty or half full. You know, depends on the perception. You know. Well, what about the fact that in every mind moment, there is pure perception? And if pure perception is there, it means that Buddha nature is actually in every moment. The pure perception is actually happening. The only thing is we got 17 moments of mental formations that we're kind of making up about the whole thing. You know. So mindfulness is actually the awareness of this whole process. You know, it's not one thing. You know. And what's true about it is that the mindfulness has no intelligence, by the way. Okay? It is simply a term used for the memory of the arising of here. Okay? This is it, right here. Okay? Well, if you said it was just that, it would be very self-limiting. You know? But the thing that the Buddha said, well, what is there's a parallel that happens, which is what the word he used was sampapajana, which means clear comprehension. That along with that knowing that the perception is happening, there's also, and that we're making stuff up all the time about it, there is actually an intelligence, a basic intelligence that parallels the mindfulness. And it's not about your brain. Okay? It's not something that's thinking. that's making things up about it. What it is a internal kind of compass of knowing. And they say that first one is that it is the clear comprehension of purpose. And so we know about that pure perception. Therefore, we know about awakening. We know it actually is part of us. And that there can be a sensing or a longing or an understanding that this is actually your nature, what you are. And that you, when that mindfulness is there in continuous moments, so that the effort there is the continuity of it, and the sampapajana, this clear comprehension, begins to stabilize itself, which is what we're doing here, is that then there is a sensing, and it's not something that I can say is it may be just some kind of flavoring. And that flavoring says, oh, I am that I am. And that I am an example. Some part of me knows what awakening is. And if I know what awakening is, then I also understand that I can trust in, you could say, the greater mind in some ways. Now, that's maybe exaggeration here, or could be taken wrong, the greater mind, but that there is an expanded intelligence that will do everything you need to do. Okay? So it goes back to the faith again. And that intelligence has the ability to take what it perceives, its perception, and the mental formation, and bring this intelligence to it, and adapt to whatever's happening. They talk about it as suitability or adaptability, but it's not something you do, okay? We're not talking about doing here. There's something that's built into the mindfulness that has the intelligence. And maybe it's just the training of the mind into the body-heart. That from that wholeness there is a connection. You're connected. So you don't really have to think about it. You naturally, it's like the heart naturally knows what to do. You don't have to fight about it. You don't have to instinctively. When there's the continuity of the mindfulness, then that intelligence, you begin to trust that intelligence. And that it actually is, they say it's self-supporting. So the third aspect of it is it reminds itself. So the mindfulness that is part of this sampapajana, part of this clear comprehension, is that it understands its capacity to be mindful in the next moment. And that it also has understanding of what is so or what is real. Now, that gets a little trickier because it's not either or, because there's two things that are going on here. One of them is that when that comprehension is there of the physical one-dimensional reality that we experience, that I used the word the other night about potential, or also the word emptiness. That it only, when you break it down to its fundamentals, to its energetic level, it is coreless. It has its substancelessness. So it is actually, there's a cognizance of knowing the emptiness or the potentiality. So this is not what you're seeing. What you're seeing is the arising of potential, but is not formed yet, right? So you're actually below it, outside of the, actually the four dimensions that we know. And when that's understood as part of the clear comprehension, so that means that you have the power in any circumstance, because it's not real. It's actually an illusion or delusion that is being created by the 16 moments of mental formation. And you don't buy it. Okay? I don't buy it. Yeah. So, but that's a bit nihilistic on that level. Okay? So it can't just be that. The other one is that there's no way, as part of that clear comprehension of this, that it also says that, okay, so this is all potential, and this is exactly what's happening right now. You are here, I am here. Every little nuance that you see, you hear, you smell, you taste, you feel bodily is here. And there is no separation. All separation is untrue. So, I can't actually take anything out of this. Not one thought, not one, molecule. It is exactly what it is. So I'm holding both of these things. One of them, this is just exactly the way it is, and the other one is I see through the illusionary nature of it. There's no core to it. There's no core to me. There's no core to you. There's no core to any of this. Nothing I see or hear or taste or smell. All of that is just part of a river, a flow of information that's moving. And you are brilliant. You have this capacity then to not be caught by the delusion, and at the same time not deny the reality of, what can I say about this? First Noble Truth. All of this is a defined experience that arises, is here for a while, and passes away. Everything that you see, everything that's experiencable. And it has, therefore, the nature of suffering. And it also has the nature of luminosity, of brilliance. Isn't that cool? I just think that's so cool, because when the emptiness, the not holding of it, the non-grasping is there, then all these objects, everything you see is liberated. It's not held in the grasping anymore. Therefore, it's actually, they talk about it, it's just held in the suchness of it. That the objects in the movement are free.
So we suffer because we hold on to the experience of ourselves.
That's all. That's all. Everything is self-referential. No. And what is the self? You know? From this viewpoint, it's just, from a moment that there's an object that arises, out of this karmic stream of a phenomenal, like there's a collection going on here. So there's you, and you have your specific, they call it the subtle mind stream. And you are a specific set of habits with certain forces that you are bringing into this room. All of our stories are like garbage, all mixed up. Oh, God. And it's all self-referential. Like, how many centers of the universe are there? A whole bunch of them. Walking around bouncing off of each other. But from this experience of this intelligence, that the awareness or consciousness, that it's making itself up. So, self-identity is another mental construct. And what is its nature? Grasping. What is its experience? Fear. Ooh. Holy smoke. Its experience is fear. Why? Because when you look at reality from that sampapajana, from this truth of non-separateness, it separated itself out. Right? It says, no, I'm not connected, I'm separate.
It's the fall from grace.
Whoa. Yeah. Pretty much. So we do that. And I'm not saying it's one way or the other, it's just that when we understand this, that there is some kind of illuminating mind that sees how it works. And if you see how it works, then there is great tolerance. And that tolerance is, it's like I think a grandmother. I've seen it all. And so we come here in a lot of ways, and I don't want to, this is probably the wrong thing to say, but this is a quick aging process. We're coming here to speed up the seasons in a way to see how it works. And why in the Chinese tradition, why is there such high respect for the elder is because they've seen the seasons. And they've been bashed by the season. They've seen the good ones and they've seen the bad ones, and they see the progression. And there's this incredible acceptance, and incredible tolerance that we're actually learning here through, not through the seasons and the disasters, but actually through the minute moments that reflect all things. So it's a laboratory that's reflecting all that, arises and passes away. So we have an inspection here of the mini universe, of how it works. So I don't know if it's fair to say it's a quick aging process, but anyway. I can get away with it. But I think so. Why? Because the next kind of level of these 5 powers is when we recognize there's a capacity to collect ourselves. So the mindfulness is basically the capacity to be here moment after moment And the effort is the continuity of that, and the phenomenal, some of the results of that. There's also in this our capacity to, and I don't like the word concentrate, by the way. I like the word collecting. You know, that we begin to collect ourselves. And to collect ourselves means that we actually are no longer in the complicated, but we are, in a sense, through the boundaries in a lot of ways, we're creating a simple, true experience that then can collect itself. And as it collects itself, then it actually has the capacity to look deeper. In this case, we're not going towards trance so much as we look deeper into the mindfulness through the concentration, so that we begin to see the specificness of that clear comprehension, because it's so subtle and it's moving so fast. At 17 trillions, the blink of an eye. No, you get that. But anyway, it's moving so fast, and we're always behind the 8 ball, and we do begin to get it. But we have to, the more collected we are, the more precise the mind and heart can be at observing how it operates. So we're here observing how it operates, and we're actually collecting, we're doing a tremendous amount of collecting. And we're supporting each other in that collecting. But the purpose is actually for the mindfulness. Now, the 5th of these is the result of all of this. And the result of all of this is the word wisdom. You could call it discernment. It is the function of the mindfulness in its continuity when there is an understanding that we can't control what's happening. So there's faith from the kind of letting go of the operating system on some level, that we're actually letting go of that operating system. Our ability to control it, and it's kind of trust that there's actually some collective, the self-organizing chaos is not in our hands. It's something that's been going on and will go on, and it's due to the karmic flow. This word wisdom, it comes from a series of continued insights that then bring us back out of ourselves into a full understanding, which then begins to refine our speech, our action, our livelihood, back to the Eightfold Noble Path. And we begin to refine it and learn that this basic intelligence and our capacity to I love this word. I don't know for the last 6 months, the uncomplicated. Is how we can stay in the uncomplicated. And I'm not saying you always can, but there is a piece of somewhat renunciation that has to go with our lives, you know, if we are addicted to things, or if we are, you know, places where we, you know, get really discombobulated or confused or whatever, that maybe it's better that we, maybe, you know, maybe that's not so smart, maybe that's not so wise, you know. So we find what it is that, for specifically for you, we're all different here. We're the most unique. You know, only one of you has ever been made in all of time. That's also a mathematical reality. You know? And this combination of your own wounding and your own inspiration and your own foolishness, you know, and your own longing, wow, that's pretty cool. You know? But you have to know what works for you. You know, it may not work for someone else. Okay? And the wisdom here is the fact that one of the things I'm always wrestling with myself is you know, kind of the good boy and the capacity. You know, I'm in the helping kind of profession where I want to help everybody. I can't help everybody all the time. You know, I do a pretty good job of it. But then maybe something like cancer comes along and kind of knocks you off the pedestal and say, you know what? You know, and it's not always what it appears to be. You know. And so it goes back to, you know, the responsibility of holding yourself. You know, I've just been, I seem to get, I learn this over and over again, and some of you may really get this, is, you know, where, you know, sometimes I want to help somebody so much so I abandon myself and it ends up actually a mess. You know, where it's either taken wrong or it ends up kind of screwed up in some way. You know, it happens, you know. But what I do know is that what this is actually about, that wisdom is about, is that, you know, that I can learn to own. You know, it's in the sense of codependency. I've learned to own myself. And I will keep learning this over and over again. You know. And each of you will have different things. Like, you know, some of you it may be that, you know, betrayal or abandonment issues, or, you know, you have anger issues or whatever, you know, whatever they are, or, you know, you capitulate too easily, or you know, react too quickly. You know, it's the whole gamut. You know. But it's getting to know yourself, to know how that works, and then taking responsibility for it on some level. You know. And I know for myself that, you know, you learn it once, you blow it. You learn it twice, you blow it. You learn it 3 times, you blow it. I just don't get this. How long does it take? Same old stories, you know. You know. But it's your humanness, you know. Part of it is what makes you unique, you know. And I don't know. I think making mistakes. You know, hopefully we learn from them. But there's also making mistakes, and there's also this thing about the heart. That the heart is moved by the mistakes. Sometimes it's not moved by perfection. Unfortunately. So, you know, in time we will. I believe it's an evolutionary process, thank goodness. It's actually, I hope, some kind of spiral. And, but it seems sometimes you go around the same one, it doesn't go anywhere. You know. Funny creatures, aren't we? This is another piece from Ajahn Chah. When I had been practicing for only 2 or 3 years, I still could not trust myself. But after I had experienced much, I learned to trust my own heart. When you have this deep understanding, whatever occurs, you can let it occur. And all things will pass and be quelled. You will reach a point where the heart tells itself what to do. It is constantly probing, constantly mindful. Your only concern need be to continuously contemplate. So, there has to be this mindfulness, and there has to be that sense of that contemplating really has to do with the factors of inquiry. That, it's not what it appears to be. So I'll finish here with my poem. 2 legs. Now, having found the mountain, looking up, covered in mist, heart sinks. Inner teacher says, quote, "Stop, feel your feet. Look only at your next step." 2 legs, point up the mountain, listening to the many voices, waiting for that one word that points the compass to the original face. Pinnacle within your own mind. This leg of wisdom. The other leg stiff, held by the old pains, memories, protections, only moved when the heart softens. I have been with you all these years. We will climb together. Knowing all those that we have touched climb with us. Dalai Lama refrains, calls us over and over again, don't give up.